You're watching Study with Sudhir. My name is S Sudhir, and we are on Act 5, Scene 1 of The Merchant of Venice, the concluding scene of this play. Now, as I explained to you in the introduction video, this is essentially a romantic comedy, which is why the mood in the concluding scene of the play is one of fun, one of romance, one of love, one of carefree banter, and everything gets resolved. What we saw in the first 4 acts of the play does not really come out very strongly in the concluding scene. So let's get started. The scene starts in Belmont. In fact, this entire scene is set in Belmont, and the two characters who we see on stage are Lorenzo and Jessica, in whose care Portia, as you know, had left the house when she went to Venice. Of course, she did not reveal that she was going to Venice, but that's what she actually did, and we know that through the trial scene in Act 4, Scene 1. Lorenzo says, "The moon shines bright in such a night as this, when the sweet wind did gently kiss the trees, and they did make no noise in such a night. Troilus methinks mounted the Trojan walls, and sighed his soul towards the Grecian tents where Cressid lay that night." Now you have about 4 classical literary references in the first 2 pages of your textbook as far as this scene is concerned, and you would need to know about each one of these classical literary references. So he's saying that the moon is shining bright tonight. It's on a night like this when the sweet wind is blowing the trees in a gentle manner, as if kissing the trees, and the branches make absolutely no noise. It was on a night like this that Troilus climbed up to the walls. I think Troilus climbed up to the walls of Troy. The Trojan walls means Trojan or Trojan walls means the walls of the city of Troy, and sighed in love. Sighed because he was in love, looking at the Greek tents, the Grecian tents where Cressida was sleeping. Now, what exactly is the story all about? Troilus was the son of the king of Troy, and he and Cressida loved each other. But when the kingdom of Troy was under siege, when it was attacked by the enemy, Cressida was handed over to the Greeks in exchange for the prisoners. Okay, now there, when she was there among the Greeks, she fell in love with a person called Diomed, Diomed. So every night what Troilus did, because he was obviously in love with Cressida, he stood on the walls of Troy looking at the Greek camp at a distance, and Cressida therefore became the symbol of the unfaithful lover. Okay. Jessica says, in such a night did Thisbe fearfully overtrip the dew, and saw the lion shadow before himself, and ran dismayed away. Now, this is the second example being cited, now this time by Jessica. Jessica says, it's on a night like this that Thisbe walked lightly over the dew. Overtrip means walk lightly over the dew. Dew means os in Hindi. And saw the shadow of the lion, and ran away frightened. Okay, dismayed as in the reference of being scared. Now, Thisbe and Pyramus, who was her lover, were lovers in the city of Babylon, and their parents were against their relationship, so they were not allowed to meet. So they decided to meet in a forest, though some references also talk about how they met near a tomb. Okay, Thisbe arrived first before Pyramus, and saw a lion which had a bloody mouth after a recent kill. Okay, the lion had killed someone, some other animal perhaps, most likely, and it had a bloody mouth. So she flees, she runs away scared on seeing the lion, but in the process leaves behind her cloak as in the garment which you wear outside, like a long coat. When Pyramus arrives, Pyramus, when Pyramus arrives, he's shocked to see the blood-stained cloak of Thisbe, which he obviously recognized, because the lion had torn it and left the blood marks on it. The blood marks from its mouth, it had left on the cloak. Now, what does Pyramus obviously conclude? That Thisbe was killed by the animal, by the beast. And also he saw the tracks of the lion. So when Thisbe subsequently returns after a while, by the time Pyramus is not there, she finds the dead body of Pyramus, because he has killed himself. She finds a dead body of Pyramus. In grief, he has killed himself, and in grief, she also kills herself. So this is a story of two faithful lovers, no doubt about that, but love that could not be fulfilled. So the first one is of unfaithful love. The second one, unfaithful. Then who asked Troy people, kingdom of Troy, to give her over to the Greek tense? That can be argued, but it is seen as a symbol of unfaithful love. The second, of love which could not be fulfilled. Lorenzo, in such a night stood Dido with a willow in her hand upon the wild sea banks and waft her love to come again to Carthage. Now, Lorenzo says, on a night like this, Dido stood with a willow branch, willow with which cricket bats are made, with a willow branch in her hand by the seashore, and waved to her lover, begging her to return to Carthage. Okay, now this is a reference to the third one, is a reference to the love story between Aeneas, who is a Trojan warrior, and Dido, the queen of the kingdom of Carthage. But one day he left her and never returned, Dido. What Lorenzo is saying is thinking that Dido must have sighed for her lover, for her lover on the seashore. Dido must have sighed for her lover, that is Aeneas, on the seashore, and Dido subsequently made a funeral pyre for herself and died on it. Again, love which could not be realized. Okay. Now, you would wonder what is really the connection of these two guys talking about all these things, because Shakespeare also liked to show off his knowledge of classical literature, and those days, all these things were considered quite a big deal. In such a night, Medea gathered the enchanted herbs that did renew old Aeson. Now, Jessica says, on such a night, Medea gathered magical herbs to renew or rejuvenate old Aeson and make him feel young again. If you recall, you would have studied in class 9, there was a reference to Jason and the golden fleece, right, in Act 1 of the play. Now, Medea was his wife who helped him win the golden fleece. She also gathered magical herbs at night and administered them to her father-in-law Aeson to restore his youth. So these are the 4 stories. Okay, the first 3 stories are more important and more relevant. Okay, Lorenzo, in such a night did Jessica steal. Now he comes to the present. Steal from the wealthy Jew, and with an unthrift love did run from Venice as far as Belmont. So Lorenzo says, on a night like this, Jessica ran away from the wealthy Jew. Okay, so steal, the word steal here is used, of course, in the literary sense. It also is used in the sense of running away, eloping. She ran away from Venice to distant Belmont with her lover, that is Lorenzo, who has no money. So he's pretty clear and pretty honest about himself, because he's a spendthrift. Unthrift love, referring to he's a spendthrift. Okay, and he's the one who gets very lucky in this particular play. Jessica, in such a night did young Lorenzo swear his love. He loved her well, and stealing her soul with many vows of faith and never a true one. So they're essentially teasing each other as well. So she says that on a night like this, young Lorenzo swore that he loved her a lot. He stole her heart with vows of love, but not one of these vows were true. Lorenzo says, in such a night did pretty Jessica, like a little true. So they're also trying to rhyme in such a way, slander her love, and he forgave it her. So he says, on a night like this, pretty Jessica, like a bad-tempered woman, Shrew refers to a bad-tempered woman, said false. Slander means false and damaging kind of statements about her lover, but he forgave her. Okay. I would outnight you, did nobody come, but hark, I hear the footing of the man. So Jessica says, I would beat you on this game of words, but if no one interrupts us, but wait, I do hear someone coming. I hear the footsteps of someone, of a man. Okay, so the important thing about these 4 is that they compare themselves to famous lovers from classical literature who were romantic figures, but not one of them. I mean, they didn't really have a happy ending in that sense, the first 3 in particular, right? So Troilus and Cressida, Thisbe and Pyramus, Dido and Aeneas, Jason and Medea, to an extent kind of thing. Okay, they have ultimately tragic endings. Okay, so it's a stories of misunderstanding, betrayal, and death. Okay, Stefano is the guy who enters, who comes so fast in the silence of the night. He says, I'm a friend. Lorenzo says, a friend? What friend? Your name, I pray you, my friend. So he's asking his identity. He says, Stefano is my friend. So if you get an MCQ about who is the person who comes and interrupts Lorenzo and Jessica, and you get options like Lancelot, Stefano, Balthazar, Nerissa, Graciano, anyone, So you need to know. So these are the small things which you need to pay attention to when you are dealing with MCQs, in particular from an MCQ point of view. Stefano is my name, and I bring word my mistress will be before the break of day, which means she will be here before daybreak. Daybreak is dawn. In fact, that's one of the MCQs I had put in our test series on our app. So dawn, so you could get one of the options as dawn. So you need to know break of day is before sunrise, and that is obviously referring to the time of dawn, right? She's wandering about. Stray, she doth stray means she's wandering about roadside shrines. So he's also keeping up with the lie, or probably what Portia has asked him to communicate. With crosses where travelers pray for a happy married life. So that's what she's praying about. Obviously no information about what she has actually been up to in the Duke's court in Venice. Who comes with her? None but a holy hermit and her maid. I pray you, is my master yet returned? So Lorenzo asks who comes with Portia, and Stefano tells her that only Nerissa and a hermit. He doesn't not appear anywhere. So it seems a little strange, this talk of a hermit, and is never heard of after this. Stefano asks if Bassanio has returned. Lorenzo replies that he has not, and nor he had heard about him. He tells Jessica that they should prepare to welcome Portia, right? Lancelot enters saying sola sola, voho sola sola. Who calls sola? Did you see Master Lorenzo? Master Lorenzo sola sola. So as usual, playing the fool, he informs Lorenzo that Bassanio will be here tomorrow morning, the next morning, according to a messenger from him. Horn means that he blew the horn to announce the good news. And sola sola, he is saying because he has seen the messenger from Bassanio. Okay. He has seen the messenger from Bassanio who wears a horn suspended from the neck. Okay, so he's imitating the sound of the horn, this whole sola sola thing, to show its arrival, and he teases Lorenzo by pretending not to have recognized his voice. So basic tomfoolery, which is pretty insignificant. Okay, post is the reference to the he's seen a messenger. That's what the reference, that tell him a post come from my master with his horn full of good news. My master will be here before morning. ERE means before. And he exits, thankfully. He's the most irritating character in the entire play. Lorenzo, sweet soul, let's in, and they expect they're coming, and yet no matter, why should we go in? Normally Lancelot never came, but I think it was in 2019 that a Lancelot passage came, much to the surprise of everyone. Otherwise, Lancelot is really one of the minor characters who isn't really given much importance. Okay. Now, Lorenzo says, sweet soul, let's in, and they expect they're coming, and yet no matter, why should we go in? My friend Stefano signify, I pray you within the house, your mistress is at hand, and bring your music forth into the air. Now there is a talk of music, right? So he says, my dear Jessica, let's go inside the house and wait for them to arrive. Wait for who? Portia and Nerissa. But I guess it does not matter. Why should we go in? Stefano announced to the household staff that your mistress will arrive shortly. Is at hand means she's pretty close by and she would be coming pretty soon, and play some music. And Stefano exits. And then how sweet the moonlight sleeps upon this bank. Here will we sit and let the sounds of music creep in our ears, soft stillness, and the night become the touches of sweet harmony. Now, the idea of playing music are two, and you need to pay attention to this. We saw it in Act 3, Scene 2, music being played, and one of the reasons that was being spoken about that time was that Portia wanted to kind of calm her nerves, and of course the other thing about, did the music actually end up giving a hint to Bassanio in any way about the right casket, right? The role of music. Again, now in Belmont, music is played. So music is an integral part of Belmont's character, the city's character. In contrast to Venice, which is associated with laws, with money, with wealth, with trade, with merchants, with, more commercial capital, which is Venice, whereas Belmont is a much more of a relaxed and a cultural kind of a town. So you need to also understand the contrast between the two towns, the two cities. Lorenzo, how beautifully the moonlight is shining on this bank. Sleeps means it's a very calm and a very gentle kind of a light. We will sit here and let the sound of music fill our ears, right? The stillness of the night suits the notes of the melodious music. The stillness means absolutely calm of the night, right? It suits, it is in sync with, it's almost in harmony with the melodious music. So he's asking Jessica to sit Jessica, look how the floor of heaven is thick inlaid with patinas of bright gold. So he says sky, the floor of heaven is referring to the sky. Look how the sky is thickly decorated. Inlaid means decorated with patterns. Patterns means small pieces of shiny metal. It may seem a little surprising that he's referring to stars as bright gold because they are not golden in color. He's comparing the stars to small patterns of bright gold. Okay, there is not the smallest orbit which thou beholdest, but in its motion like an angel sings. So he says that the stars and planets move in perfect harmony, and it seems as if you can hear the music in the movement. Okay, or means planet or any form of heavenly body. Okay, now there is not the smallest orb which thou beholdest. Now this is an interesting line because it is a reference, indirect reference to Pythagoras. Remember, there is a reference made to Pythagoras in the earlier part of the play as well. He's talking here, Lorenzo is talking here about his theory of the music of the spheres. And it seems strange because Lorenzo so far did not come across as a very sophisticated or perhaps even a very educated kind of person. But here he's talking about Pythagoras's music of the theory of the music of the spheres. According to Pythagoras, please note it down, each planet in the solar system produced a particular note. Okay, the different notes formed a harmony. This led to the music of the spheres, in which the stars also are an integral part. So the music also kind of includes the entire solar system. Now, the idea behind making Lorenzo speak about the beauty of the night was to bring the romance back to center stage after a very, very serious and a heavy duty trial scene in Act 4, Scene 1, the whole tension. And the Elizabethan audience at that particular point in time really appreciated these kind of scenes, which were beautifully written and beautifully crafted and presented on stage. And Lorenzo's these lines, this particular passage by Lorenzo, these lines are considered one of the most beautiful lines written in this particular play by Shakespeare. So what Lorenzo is saying is that even the smallest star sings like an angel in its motion, the way it moves. Okay, it can also possibly mean that angels listen to the music created by the stars and the heavenly bodies. The song is like a choir. Okay, is like a choir. Is like a choir. Yeah, it's like a choir to the cherubims. Cherubims are the angels who are close to God, those with very bright kind of eyes. Okay, so Q-U-I-R-E is the old spelling of C-H-O-I-R, which is the modern spelling of choir. Okay, so he says that our souls are, which are immortal, also have the same kind of a harmony. But while we are on each in our human bodies, while we are here on earth in our human bodies, which is referring to the muddy vesture of decay. He's talking about the human bodies and the immortality, the mortality of the human bodies, and it encloses the soul in a rough manner. Okay, grossly means rough, in a manner we cannot hear the music while we are within our human bodies, and we are not able to hear and appreciate the music. Vesture literally means clothing. Okay, and decay because the body decays after death and gets into the muddy death. So he's kind of making a rather philosophical kind of a statement. Okay, at that stage, musicians enter the scene, which he has already asked for just a few lines before. Come ho and wake Diana with a hymn, with sweetest touch pierce your mistress's ear and draw her home with music. So he says, wake up Diana, okay, who is the Roman goddess of the moon and hunting. He asks the musicians to wake her up with a hymn. This is because the backstory of this is, you may want to know and remember, is because Diana was in love with someone called Endymion, E-N-D-Y-M-I-O-N, and she came down every night from heaven to live with him. Okay. Also, the covering of the moon with a cloud was interpreted as a sleep of the moon in the context of Diana, and therefore the call to wake her up. That's a backstory of this particular line of wake Diana with a hymn. Okay. So the mistress referred to now is Portia. Pierce your mistress's ear. And Lorenzo asked the musicians to play their sweetest notes till they reach Portia's ears, who is on her way back home, so that the sweet melodies draw her back. Later on, we will hear a reference to music again. Okay. So Jessica says, I'm never merry when I hear sweet music. Okay. Means that she becomes very serious when she listens to sweet music. Lorenzo says the reason for that is that your senses are receptive to the melody of music. Okay. That's because you're receptive. That's why you react in a particular manner. So he says, note a wild and wanton herd or race of youthful and unhandled colts, fetching mad bounds, bellowing and neighing loud. So what he's referring to now is animal behavior. Okay. So he says, note a wild herd of untamed or mischievous, wanton means mischievous animals, or a breed of young untrained horses. Colts means young horses, jumping about madly, making a loud sound. Bellowing or neighing around are the sounds which are made by horses, which is their nature. Hot condition of their blood means it is part of their nature. If they but hear perchance a trumpet sound or any air of music touch their ears. Now all these animals that he's talking about, if by chance, perchance, if by chance, if they hear a trumpet sound or any kind of music, they come to a standstill together. They just stop. Okay. All of them together. Their wild, savage means their wild eyes turn into a very peaceful or a mild look, modest gaze as a result of the music that they hear. Therefore, okay, these lines are important. They could come as a possible reference to context or even as an MCQ. Therefore, the Roman poet Ovid, the reference to Orpheus that he's making out here. So he's saying, therefore, the Roman poet Ovid wrote about how Orpheus, who is a Greek musician, MCQ questions can come about who is the Greek musician being referred to, and they can try to confuse you by mentioning Dido, they can mention Pyramus, they can mention Aeneas, and also Orpheus. So just be careful and remember the musician who is being referred to. So the Greek musician being referred to here is Orpheus. About how Orpheus was a Greek musician, could make trees, stones, okay, trees, stones, and floods as in streams, the water body, move from place to place by the power of his music and bring them to life. So there is nothing so stubborn, stockish means stubborn, hard, or fierce, full of rage means fierce, which can resist music. So he's saying music is most powerful and it has that kind of strength. So the man who cannot be moved by the harmony, concord means harmony, of music is only fit for treachery, plotting, and destruction. Okay. Treasons, stratagem, and spoils. Okay, that's what each of the words means. Treachery, plotting, and destruction. And the thoughts and feelings of his soul are as dull as the night, and his emotions dark as hell. Okay, Erebus means the home of the dead, and it is an area of darkness near hell. Okay, remember that. So no man like this should be trusted. Now pay attention to the music. Mark the music. Mark my words. Means listen carefully to the music. Okay, so we will pause here, and this is the stage at which, this is the point at which Portia and Nerissa enter the scene. We will do that in part 2 of this particular scene explanation. I hope till here is absolutely clear. Thank you very much for watching.